This week on Art in the Air, our whole feature interview is with artist, designer, photographer, and creative director known for his surreal use of color and light, pioneering juxtapositions of traditional and digital mediums, Chuck Anderson. Our spotlight is with Improductions Director of Operations, Nelson Velazquez, about their post-COVID improv productions and classes.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart.
Welcome. You're listening to Art on the Air on WVLP 103.1 FM and Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM, our weekly program covering arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. I'm Larry Breckner of New Perspectives Photography, right alongside here with Esther Golden of The Nest in Michigan City.
Aloha, everyone.
We're your hosts for Art on the Air. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project grant through South Shore Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts. Art on the Air streams live at WVLP.org and is rebroadcast on Monday at 5 p.m., plus is also heard on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM every Sunday at 7 p.m., also streaming live at lakeshorepublicradio.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Radio's website as a podcast. Our spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Radio. Information about Art on the Air is available at our website, breck.com/AOTA. That's Breck, BRECH.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our show is available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for information about upcoming shows and interviews. We'd like to welcome to Art on the Air Nelson Velazquez, who is from Improv Productions, which is part of the whole wonderful operation. He's Director of Operations. And, of course, they've been kind of shut down because of the pandemic, and now they're getting ready to do a lot more initiatives. So tell us a little about Nelson. Welcome to Art on the Air Spotlight.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Welcome. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Good to see you. It's weird seeing you because it's been a while. It's been a while since we've seen a lot of people, right? And it's still weird. I still get weirded out by it.
I know. It's just it feels like a big time warp. It's like it has, is it a day or is it a year and a half?
You know, everything feels like 2019 again, doesn't it?
That's for sure. Well, and Esther and I haven't seen each other face to face except through Zoom, though that will change shortly since a year ago March. So it's been kind of strange.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been strange for everybody. I mean, from an improv perspective, you know, we've been going since the pandemic started. I mean, we've been doing online shows, doing the Zoom shows online for a year. Every Saturday, 7:00 p.m. Central, we've been doing the grid, and that's been holding us over. But we have done a few shows live, and it's been weird. Even though I've seen these people twice a week for the last year and a half, it's still weird to me having those people there.
Well, yeah, and you know, using Zoom for improv it's different because so much of the body language is part of improv. You know, the little nonverbal signals and looks and things which sort of come across in Zoom, but not the same way.
Right. So we developed. I mean, we've developed a approach to it from the perspective of like it's now about connectivity versus relationship or the content of what we do. Like if we can make you believe that we are in the same like head, third eye space that we invoke when we're in the same room with our audience, if we're able to do that online, then we are like more than ahead of the curve. And so that kind of brings in those kinds of things, those cues that you talk about of like, we're able to build on those. Once we get connected, it's the same feeling that we get. It's just, you know, we're not able to touch. We're not able to be, you know, physically connected to each other.
So tell us what you got coming up now that you're getting back into the whole improv game.
Yeah, so we've been blessed. We got mentioned on Late Night with Stephen Colbert recently because we've been doing shows on the beach. We're doing beach prov again. So we're at the Dunes, the Indiana Dunes National Park. We're doing shows there. We're doing 2 shows in August, 2 shows in September, and we just did 2 shows in July. So we're blessed that he even mentioned us. Jim Gaffigan even did a bit about us. And so we're really excited about the fact we were mentioned on a national scale. So we had a pretty good turnout the last one, and we're hoping to build up on that. So, if you're out on the beach, come and join us. It's free. You do have to pay for park admission, but the show itself is absolutely free. And then we've got a show coming up. Our first self-produced show is coming up, and it's called Dynamic Duos. And we're going to be featuring dynamic duos across Northwest Indiana and Southern Illinois who are going to come out, and we're going to see a bunch of 2-person acts doing a bunch of different things and enjoying their what they have to offer. I will be a part of that show, so you definitely want to come out and see that.
Who's your duo?
My duo is called Love and Improv. We're actually online right now. We're doing online. We've been doing off and on roughly. We're on season 3 now. We've been roughly doing 6-week runs online. And what we do is it's kind of like a love line / relationship show. So we take people's questions about their relationships, and then we answer them through the lens of love and improv. And all relationships are improvised. And we figured, hey, might as well do this live and see what that's like, taking the virtual show and bringing it to the real world. See how that goes.
Did you have classes for people that are interested in getting involved in the improv?
Yeah, we do. The easiest way to look those things up is basically go hit our website. We've got adult classes coming up, as well as Teamprov classes coming up, and those are going to be running in September and October timeframe. So they can go by and check those out at our website at improductionsllc.com and check out our workshops there.
And they have beginner, but you also have something for maybe someone more advanced?
Right now, no. Actually, a lot of our stuff is for the beginner. We're having to rebuild our repertoire as it is, because a lot of things have changed due to the pandemic. So at this point, it's all for mainly targeted for beginners. But if you're more advanced and you want to get involved with us, just hit us up on our Facebook page, Improductions LLC, or you can hit us up on Instagram as well at Improductions LLC. And
where do you work out of as far as the space when you get back in person?
So primarily working out of a space in Crown Point, Indiana. It's a Crown Brewery. Is what it's called. We're working out of that space, but we're also all over the place. We're in different theaters. We've done stuff with 4th Street Theater in Chesterton. We've done stuff with East Wind Studios in Chesterton. We've done some stuff in Portage as well. So we're kind of all over the place right now.
Well, if you're interested, it's Improductions, LLC.com. That's Nelson Velazquez, Director of Operations for it. Thank you so much for being on Art on the Air Spotlight, Nelson.
Such terrific work, Nelson. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You're listening to Art on the Air, WVLP 103.1 FM, and on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM. We'd like to welcome to Art on the Air, established in 2004 at the age of 18, No Pattern Studio. It's a Chicago art practice of an artist, designer, photographer, creative director known for his surreal use of color and light, pioneering these juxtapositions of traditional and digital medium. Please welcome to Art on the Air, Chuck Anderson from No Pattern Studio.
Hi, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be
aloha,
here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, Chuck, what we'd like our audience to hear is kind of your story, your journey, like I described, is like how you got from where you were to where you are now.
Sure. Well, I feel like I have various versions of the story depending on how much time I have, So, I think
you have plenty of time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I'm just to frame it up very chronologically. So I'm 36 now. So I've basically half my life has been spent as a student up through high school, and then the second half of my life, which I'm firmly in right now, is the last 18 years have been me sort of navigating, my career over various, different paths throughout that time. So, yeah, I mean, growing up, I loved art. I loved to draw. My dad loved to draw. He would draw comic book characters and, with colored pencils. And I just admired his, his abilities to just look at something and draw really quickly. And I just came to love art. I participated really heavily in art, classes in school and in all the competition type things in junior high and high school, and until I eventually was introduced to Microsoft Paint at some family friend's house, and I was completely and utterly fascinated by the immediacy with which I was able to to work and undo things. And it was very gratifying to sort of be introduced, and draw and create things on a computer in such a way where I could fill something in quickly or I could undo something immediately. And I think I was just really taken by that. And so, computers became really important to my work. And I got a illegally downloaded copy of Photoshop at some point in high school. And, it's funny because I've told clients at Adobe that since, and they're like, yeah, that's how we acquired a lot of our customers. So, like, look, it's just, there was a point in time where that was just like, I couldn't afford it, and you just do what you got to do. So, honestly, it's just been, a lot of teaching myself, a lot of, I would go to Borders bookstore and get books about Photoshop. I ended up getting a job there, which helped me be able to bypass the fact that I couldn't afford the books because you could check them out like as an employee. And so that was a dream come true as a broke 16-year-old kid. So, it was just a lot of sort of fascination at that age, and pre-social media, the internet hadn't really sort of eaten the world the way that it has, in this day and age. So, eventually just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. So Chuck, did the school support any of this? Like any of your artistic, curiosities?
Yeah, I was really lucky. I went to a public high school, in the south suburbs of Chicago called Lincoln Way. And I was really lucky. I had a couple teachers that really acknowledged my abilities, and were really super supportive. They were skeptical when I told them that I wasn't going to go to college. I really kind of got a stern talking to about if I knew what I was deciding. But they were, and I'm still in touch with those teachers. They made a really big impact in my life. And between the support of my parents and there was 3 teachers in particular who just really let me be me. And it was really made a huge difference in my life. And, at one point I had taught myself more about Photoshop. By 2001, 2002, it was very new, especially in school settings. And they really they put me in an independent study. They were like, you go in the computer lab and you make up your own projects and show us what you got, because we don't really know how to help teach you at this point with this stuff, besides like composition and the basics of fundamentals of art. So, I was really supported in that way. I feel really super lucky. They made a real big impact in my life, and I really do owe them a lot to the confidence and the just general support that I got, for sure, at that time. And then, it was a matter of skipping college, not in any sort of sexy, like, oh, I'm going to start a company in my garage and grow it. It was just, I don't have the money. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know. And I just really hustled and worked really hard.
It's really hard for, I think, artists to figure out what they're actually going to study in a university setting. There's like it's not like engineering.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know. I probably would have gone down a graphic design path to start with, and maybe photography, and but for me it was just a matter of self-teaching, and in that first year out of high school I really started getting fortunate with some client projects, and it was really sort of this slow snowball over the course of that next year or two, to where it went from like club flyer to editorial in ESPN magazine to working with Microsoft, all in the span of a year and a half, basically 2 years, as a result of basically like setting up a website and then sending emails to people. The story I tell to students all the time, and I still use this sort of strategy to this day, is these cold emails. And I would guess email addresses, trying to get in touch with magazines. I noticed magazines were hiring artists and designers, and I always wanted to know how that connection was made. And so I would look in the masthead of the magazine, find the editor, art director's name, go home, type out a nice email, quick introduction of myself and my website, which was very thin at the time, but it was what I had. And I would send like 20 emails out to 20 different addresses, your first name dot last name underscore first initial, and get bounce back after bounce back until one didn't bounce back. And that yielded a lot of really good results. That's how I ended up getting work with ESPN and the Chicago Bulls and, all sorts of brands and agencies. And I just feel like, I think I've got something here, and I just kept building. And next thing I know, I was like, I don't know if college is ever going to be a thing for me at this point. And I was just lucky in that way, I guess. So.
I think maybe college for you would have been restrictive, actually, because you just want to experiment and grow fast. I mean, sometimes faster than you can be taught by somebody else.
I've always been a bit impatient creatively. I really don't have the patience to. I've gotten better over the years, but certainly at that time, I felt an urgency, a sense of like, I need to figure this out. I don't have money. My parents don't have money for me. There's not some big backup plan here. It's either I do this or I keep working at wherever. I'd gotten a job at a screen printing shop, which ended up being how I learned Adobe Illustrator. And I learned that from a guy there, learning how to do separations for t-shirts. And that became a really foundational part of my practice and a medium that I use very much to this day. And I know how to use it because I learned some basics, just by doing and by having someone teach me very hands-on in that context. So yeah, I think it was good for me. It was the right path for me, but for other people, I always acknowledge the school might be the sort of structure that other people learn a lot better. I do much better when I'm left to my own devices. It's just,
personality thing.
The tools I see you use is, of course, Photoshop, Illustrator, but then Audition. So do you do voice work too?
Oh, that's funny. Where did you? So I used to have a podcast.
Okay, maybe that's it then.
So I had to teach myself Audition at one point. I'm the oldest of four. My dad was a pastor. My grandfather, my great grandfather, they were all pastors. I just grew up seeing all the people in my family speak in public and talk. And I got invited to speak at a very young age at a design conference in New York. The first time I ever spoke publicly, I had just turned 21 maybe, and I was at the Lincoln Center at a design conference called Semi-Permanent in front of 1,000 people with an hour to myself. I just had this irrational confidence that, well, it's in my blood. I can do this. And but that's, I learned that I really love talking to other artists, talking with people, just speaking about my work, speaking about other people's work and their paths. So I basically did what we're doing right now as a podcast that I called Life and Limb. I did for about a year back in 2014, and I only did 20 episodes, and it became more work than I felt like doing. And I recently kind of brought it back just in the form of like a Clubhouse and interviewing some people on, Twitter Spaces or Clubhouse, and just to be able to kind of have that forum to just chat with interesting people in front of an audience is something I really enjoy. But yeah, that was kind of the only thing in terms of the Audition tool. Now everybody just understands audio quality. Not you guys, of course. You probably have a far more respect for things sounding really good. But I think the average everyday person is just like, oh, AirPod quality, iPhone quality, just whatever, it's fine. But it just made it easier and more accessible, I think, more frequently with some of these new apps that have kind of facilitated these sort of dialogue spaces in that way. But yeah, Photoshop and Illustrator to me are the sort of technological tools, but I guess the age that I grew up, I grew up drawing. So for me, if I'm in Photoshop, I'm still drawing using a tablet, pen tablet, bringing in my own photography, hand done elements that I've created and weaving those elements into what I see as just another tool that I use to compose my work.
Right. Yeah, I still use Photoshop, but I luckily got them through the educational things. So I got the educational discount, but I'm locked in at CS5. I wish I did CS or Photoshop 6 before it became the cloud. And the only problem I have is my newest camera, the Canon 5D SR. I have to import it through a DNG because I can't update the RAW import. So, and I guess one of these days I'll do that.
Yeah, Photoshop and all these programs have really evolved a lot. There's a lot of stuff. I've rolled back the versions I have because I just don't need some of the stuff that's been like piled in there, But it's interesting. The tools evolve every day, and I think what really excites me is just the concept of access to tools for more people and younger people at a more affordable price point is exciting to me. Just because a lot of the stuff was very cost prohibitive to me when I was a teenager, and now stuff is generally more affordable to students and to more people. I think it could be even better, but it is exciting to me to think about just what the internet has opened up and tools have opened up to more people from different backgrounds with different, abilities to afford whatever they can. I think there's just more and more, even there's a lot of really great creative, like $1 apps out there. So overall, just to me, I think it's been really fascinating to follow along over the last 20 years or so of the rise of digital art and digital tools, how far they've come in a relatively short amount of time.
Yeah, we produced the show actually on a free app called Audacity. I'm familiar with Audition. And actually the main radio station, they're just converting now, are using Cool Edit, which ended in 2004, and which was the predecessor to Audition. So, whatever works.
Whatever works.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do you, speaking about what you just said, have you had the desire or even the time to teach at all? Like younger, I'm thinking more younger students.
So in like pockets here and there, yeah. I have not taken on any sort of like adjunct teaching role or anything like at, any schools. It's something that honestly, like later in my life, I really would like to do. And again, I think I mentioned earlier, but I'm the oldest of four, and I have a daughter, and I've got a son on the way in a couple of weeks, actually.
Oh, yay!
So teaching and mentoring and sort of helping young people creatively with their careers or technically or whatever has been really important to me through my career. So I feel like the answer would be yes, just not necessarily in a school setting.
Sure.
I've gone and spoken at a lot of colleges. I've gone back to my old high school and I've spoken and sort of taught and spoke there and done sort of teaching online. I've always tried to be really diligent and good about as much as I can. Tried to answer people's emails. I've gotten emails for years and years, hundreds of emails over the years from people all around the world just asking how did you get started, or like can you and I've tried to take the time to be thoughtful and as much as I can. I can't respond to everything, but I've tried to pay it forward in that way, because I did have a lot of people help me when I got started.
It's like what you described was almost a utopian high school experience, and it would seem like you could give that to like even if it was just a few people, that extra bit of guidance or desire, inspiration.
Certainly it wasn't like utopian is definitely extreme, but I mean my specific circumstances in at the time and in hindsight, I think were really good. I felt like my talents and my abilities and my sort of like what I wanted to do were encouraged and embraced, which is odd when I think back at the time. I mean, literally everyone else was going to college unless they were going to some like sort of trade or something. I don't know. It was good. So I think I'm just fascinated.
Well, I mean,
now.
how many students get to say, okay, go here and do, you go ahead and do it, rather than trying to fit you into their time schedule or plan. It was like pretty great.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
So for yourself personally, do you have an element or maybe a situation that sparks your creativity? Like for me personally, it would be any kind of water. It could be being at the ocean or even hearing a faucet drip. That seems to be the spark that opens, my creativity. Do you work like that at all?
Sure. Interesting question. I don't think I have something as pointed as you have with that. I'm not sure that there's something. I think that's great. I mean, I think that's something I could see happening eventually. For me, I don't know. It's such a weird thing. It feels like such a precious thing, but like, time of day or just like frame of mind, like there's times where I feel rushed and I'm like, I can't start something new right now. Like I need a clean slate. My office has to be perfect. I need to get all my ducks in a row. Things need to be just right, and like I just, where you're interviewing me right now, where we're talking is a brand new studio I just moved into here on the north side of Chicago. I've been in here for 3 weeks now. And, as you can see, there's just boxes and some things in the back. And I love the space I'm in enough. I've been able to be productive, but it's driving me nuts that I've just got like papers and things kind of on the floor. It's funny. I'm a generally pretty neat, organized person. My email's very organized. Like I know a lot of artists are definitely not that way, and they can work amongst the clutter and the chaos. I can, if that's like what's happening in the midst of the creation process. But
right, in the moment.
Yeah, I generally find that I just need like a peaceful frame of mind and a peaceful environment, and to know I have like a chunk of time ahead of me in order to create. Like it's hard for me to know like, all right, I'm gonna have to leave to pick my daughter up in an hour. If I have a client deadline, I'm like, okay, I need to get something done in the next half an hour. That's fine. But like, I really just need that sort of time and space to think if I really am starting something brand new. I don't know. I think, for me, it's just, I've always just gotten so fulfilled by making something out of nothing. There's something really exciting to me about a sheet of paper and a pen. Like I could entertain myself for hours as a kid with like just a blank canvas of any kind, or like going to a restaurant and there's like a paper, tablecloth. It's just like a big sheet of paper. Like, it was the greatest thing to me. I asked my mom for a pen or marker or whatever, and I could just sit there and draw until it was time to go. And I think, I don't know, it's just, like, I don't know, I guess it just feeds me creatively and in every way. I like to make things. And now I think the spark for me is a little bit different in that now I've got a daughter. Once I had my daughter, and she's almost 4, my reason for creating and my purpose changed a lot. There was a real evolution that I felt very tangibly, sort of mentally and maybe spiritually and even physically, where I was like willing to push myself, because I felt like I'm now making for her and her future and my family's future. And so that kind of propelled me into like a new space where I was like, sometimes I have to put all the sort of things aside and just, I have to get this done, or I have to work or whatever, because this is now for more than just me or more than just my career. It's about family now. Now that's become the driving force in my life, is like thinking about providing for them. As an independent artist, like, it's scary. There's no guarantees. Like, things could dry up and people could lose interest in my work. So for me, it's like, I don't want that to happen. So it's all on me. No one's doing it for me. So that's really the driving force at the moment. But yeah. I wish I could just say water. That sounds that's such an elegant response. Really nice,
also it would be
but,
water and wind. Sometimes
Right.
the wind just is so vocal, and it just, I don't know.
Sure.
Chuck.
No.
How would you describe you? I mean, if someone is, unfortunately, this is a radio show, but how would you describe yourself, what your work is? I mean, I know it's a lot of different layers, but give us kind of a thumbnail. Like, if someone is just listening to us, how would you describe that?
Well, I mean, I think the one thing that's been a real constant in my work over the years has been color. And generally color and energy, and a lot of really vibrant, vivid colors. It's funny because you see me, like, I don't look like, or at least maybe it's changing now as my work has evolved and maybe gotten more refined over the years. But I don't feel like I dress, or like some artists kind of take on the personality of their output and their work, and they end up like dressing like it, or like they're illustrators, or make kind of like, like they look like one of their characters, or whether it's their style or whatever. Like, I'm a very uniform, like black t-shirt, jeans, like just very like only black and gray tattoos, like just very kind of like don't look like the kind of intensity of my work, which is
so in a crowd, they wouldn't go, "Oh, artist."
No, honestly, no. And I it's funny. I just feel uncomfortable if I ever like am dressing in like colors and stuff. But when I sit down to make, I really enjoy seeing how colors mix, and it just does something, in my brain that's just really, I respond to. So yeah, I mean, color and light, a lot of layers, a lot of just a lot of texture. I try really hard to make. I do a lot of different things too. Like I kind of pride myself in my portfolio looking as if it took 10 different artists to make the work in there, because like you could take some sets of work that I do, like a lot of my editorial illustration work for like ESPN or like a sports magazine or Wall Street Journal or whatever it may be, looks one way, but then some of my work for, this other client or this other type of work or my personal work or whatever looks very different. But I think, just heavy contrasts in everything I do, and just sort of not making it obvious that the computer was used is really important to me.
Sure.
I think, or at least sort of like putting that aside. I don't want anybody to be able to pick apart how I made something, or have it look filtered or have it look generic and sort of artificial. And I think that's a real challenge when you're using a computer. So, most of my favorite artists are not digital artists even, so I think I'm always kind of just realizing like that's what I'm good at, but I think I strive to have a final output that sort of resonates with, a more sort of handmade, sort of tactile quality.
So who do you like? I mean, who's hanging on your walls? What artists do you like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different artists whose work I really love and has been, meaningful to me in my career. I mean, when I was young and like really first starting out and discovering, street artists that were, appealing to me, who I've lost a little bit of my love for like that sort of style of work, I think, over the years. But, when you're 17, 18, 19 and learning about Futura or learning about Cause, especially before Cause really became the sort of cultural phenomenon that he is today, and his background as sort of this like sort of punk kid stealing bus shelter posters and replacing them with his artwork. There's a real appeal to the sort of rebellion in that I was really drawn to, and artists like James Jean and now like I really love a lot of tattoo artists or painters and Scott Campbell and Wes Lang. But there's a lot of newer artists whose work I've really just discovered in the last couple of years that I really love, or digital artists today that are doing really beautiful work. Holly Herndon is an artist who I'm really excited about a lot of the work she's doing. And David Rudnick, graphic designer, is a really fantastic guy and designer. And I don't know, I feel like my taste is kind of just constant. I'm very open-minded. I would never just be like, I don't like this, I love that. Only this one thing. Ryan Travis Christian's a fine artist from Chicago who does a lot of pretty much all like pencil drawing work. And I love his work, his sensibilities. I'm really more drawn to sensibilities, I think, than necessarily like, I can pick up when an artist came from like a punk rock background. That really resonates with me. An artist like Raymond Pettibone, like his work is very informative and influential to my work, but I don't really do a lot of stuff that looks like what he does, if that makes sense. But I resonate with the mindset, or it resonates with me kind of like the approach he's taking. So
you're listening to Art on the Air, WVLP 103.1 FM, and on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM.
I don't even know if this is possible, but it would be so interesting maybe to take your timeline from your current work and work backwards to see how you got to where you were. But if you want to go in either direction, it doesn't matter, either from what you're doing now and kind of reflecting back on what that, how you got, your sensibilities now as opposed to when you first started.
Right. There's an artist, one of my favorite artists right now is named Sarah Gomez, just an incredible painter, and he uses airbrush and makes these beautiful scenes, usually like Los Angeles, very LA kind of scenes, but I mean, super incredible hyper realism, like just unbelievable work, but it's sort of like 90% of the painting will be out of focus and it's just texture and color, but you can tell it's a sky and like a power lines in the distance. And then in the foreground is an incredibly sharp, neon sign or the edge of like a car or something. And the works are huge. And I don't know, like I'm kind of jealous and admire artists that do that type of work. I think I want to pause what I'm doing at some point and like stop and really learn, some basics of painting or some of the fundamentals that I probably did miss by not going to school. I'm very cognizant that I didn't learn some foundational things by not going to school. I have to hire people to help me when I find gaps like that, which is frustrating,
Do you have time for personal work like that, or are you so busy with the more commercial work that...
That's a great question right now, because I'm kind of in this flux at the moment, which is really exciting. I mean, I'm, like I said, so 18 years into my career, and the journey was the first 11 years I was completely independent. And it was like 80-20 commercial personal work, I would say. So it was most like I was making my living from the client projects, and then I was sort of supplementing my practice with personal work, and then using that personal work to help sort of evolve my offerings. I believe that what you put out there is what you get in as an artist. So, I would work on these personal projects while I was getting hired to do something for a client, and then hope that personal work would inform the next client project I got, so that I was kind of always moving forward and never just doing the same thing. So 11 years of that. And then I kind of took a break from only doing that, and I ended up getting a job at an ad agency in Chicago for about 3 years, something I never thought I would do. But the offer of being the creative director of this huge agency came across, and I kind of had to take it. It just felt like a door that I wanted to explore what was behind. And I really learned a lot about kind of delegating and managing other people's time, and not necessarily having everything be about me all the time. And that was really important lessons to learn, stepping out of the limelight and trying to just oversee a project and not have my fingerprints all over it, but move it forward. And I tried and failed and tried and succeeded sometimes.
Steady paycheck with benefits.
I mean, to be honest with you, that was the other thing too, is that, like my wife's an attorney for the city of Chicago. So like the benefit thing has been with that job, she gets great benefits. So it was like, that was something when she got that job, I was like, wow, this is cool. We don't have to pay for our own health insurance right now. But like, for me, it was more like, yeah, the paycheck, the idea of like the same amount of money coming in every 2 weeks and the taxes were taken out for you kind of blew my mind. Like, I was like, wow, people have been like,
freedom.
This is like yeah, really. So that was good. It was good for me to experience that. And then I left that job and went to a different agency for about 2.5 years until COVID basically blew it up because it was all experiential and events based. Right. So last July in 2020, I was sort of forced back out on my own, which I think was the best thing that ever happened to me. Which, I did a few more client projects, and then at the start of 2020, this sort of, kind of revelation of NFTs happened, and I saw sort of this avenue open up to possibly focus more on personal work. And so you're kind of catching me at this time where I'm seeing sort of the beginning of the next chapter for me, where I want to switch that 80-20 client personal and strive for like 80-20, personal client, maybe eventually even more, to where I'm only ever doing exactly only what I want to do.
Right.
And maybe taking 1 or 2 dream client jobs in the course of a year or something like that.
So how much does photography, and then of course the second part of that question, how much is photography, used in your work as an original source piece? And then I'm looking at your website, nopattern.com, go there to see a lot of Chuck's work, and the Unreal architecture. So maybe explore both of those things for me.
Sure, yeah. I mean, so photography has been like just a real staple of my work on all sides, like whether it's client work or personal work, photography's played a huge role. I was in a band in high school, and I got a really crappy digital camera back then. It would have been like 2000, 2001, just take like the world's worst pictures in hindsight. But at the time it was like, you're telling me I can just like take a picture and pop it in my computer and have it in Photoshop in 2 seconds instead of like scanning something. So I was really sort of like how when I learned Microsoft Paint, for the first time, I was like, wow, this is really cool. Now I have this asset and I can play with it and manipulate it. Photography really quickly became instrumental in my practice. And I think what I realized is I'm a pretty good photographer, but I think I'm much better at taking the photos and doing things with them and using them as a baseline. So yeah, I think I've got a good eye, and I know how to compose a photo, and I can take a nice photo. But I get more excited about once I have that, like, now what can I do with it? So, that Unreal Architecture series, I really love taking photos alone at night a lot of times, just sort of like a meditative practice almost, something that I learned when I was like 18 years old, and I would just go for a drive and hope for a foggy night, bring my tripod and take pictures. And a lot of my first kind of really, really well-known works were just these empty parking lots that I would take photos of and add color to, and became kind of my most famous pieces and works that, became stolen a lot, or just kind of became what I was really known for. But yeah, using photography is big. And to me, if I can be the one that takes the photo, that's important to me too. But of course, sometimes with client work, they're just like, here you go. We have a bunch of, let's just say it's ESPN Magazine, who I do a lot of stuff with. We've got 15 photos of NBA players, but we don't want to just run them as is. It's just kind of, they need more. How can you kind of take the mundane and elevate it? So I see my sort of like my, offering to clients as taking sort of the bland, sort of just stock and adding to it, whether it's adding color and
right.
Yeah, really just like adding like a layer of energy and light and color, or cutting it out and making it sort of surreal and layering it up with other objects or elements and things like that. But yeah, photography plays a real role. I've kind of, changed how I use it over the years, incorporate elements of it into my work, or maybe just little bits and pieces of it. But yeah, photography is great because, as cameras have gotten better and we have our phones with us all the time, it doesn't have to be such a sort of dramatic process of lugging things around, and you just have your camera with you all the time. And, so I'm just constantly documenting things. Like I take my dog for a walk every morning, and I always take photos in the park of flowers or the sky or whatever. And I put all those photos into this one folder, on my Dropbox. And I often pull from those photos and use just elements of it in work through a collage or whatever it may be.
Is most of your photography done just with your either iPhone or cell phone? Or
no, I wouldn't say. Well, I would say like a lot of the sort of sort of library of images that I've built up for myself. A lot of those just everyday sort of photos. I make sure to save them and trying to incorporate them. But like, I have my good camera and my lenses, and when I'm like, okay, I really need to get some quality imagery here for a project or whatever, then I'll go and do that. Or when I really want to experiment with something, or if I really want to, if I really have an idea for a project and, whatever, I'll maybe take a couple test photos. Like I see the phone as almost like the pencil napkin sketch, and then the quote unquote good camera as now I've got now this is the real deal. My proof of concept is good. Now I need to actually take the good photos of it. So
Chuck, what is your good camera?
I'm still on a Sony A7R II. It's several years old now. But it's basically been, I was on a Canon Mark III, I want to say, for years before that. I moved over to using the Sony, and I'm probably due for an upgrade, but I haven't really dug around into like what, new cameras in a little while. But, for me, it's one of those things I think as artists, we tend to really geek out on and get hung up on the tool. And I know there are better cameras and things that I could use, but honestly, like for me, I have what I do need at the moment, and it's
how to use it.
Right.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. I think of it like a great guitar player could pick up some crappy old thrift store guitar and absolutely shred and sound amazing, or a really incredible photographer should be able to pick up a disposable camera, or a really great illustrator can use a box of dull Crayola crayons and make something beautiful. So I try not to get too hung up on the tools, but sometimes technology sort of dictates that you do get hung up on them, you upgrade. So, I tend not to like dwell on that too much.
I know many photographers who are what I call equipment photographers. Oh, look what I've got. I've got this and this. And it's like, but what photos do you take with it? So I agree with you. That's
sure.
It is just a tool. So, and I am a Canon shooter, but
yeah. You mentioned that your sensibilities have changed and refined. Mm-hmm. So do your commercial clients contact you based on original work mostly? And are you able to, I guess with everything, it's subject to what the client is hoping for, but are you able to inject where you are now, or are they mostly?
Yeah. I would say so. Yeah. I think, and to be honest with you, like I'm never, if a client comes to me and really hey, you did this thing 8 years ago, we really love this. For me, I don't see my skill set as this sort of, once I know how to do something, I lock it away and put it away and never use it again, so I think my job now is to do the best version of that, but I'm lucky because I think none of my clients come to me and say, hey, do this exact thing. I think a lot of clients are actually hesitant to show, because oftentimes they'll say, can you show me what was the work of mine you saw first that made you think to want to hire me? And I always ask that question because I don't do just one type of work. Right. So I kind of want to know what led them down the path to arrive at, like, you're going to pay me real money. Why? Show me why. Like, show me the 2 or 3 pieces that resonated with you, and then I'll do my best to sort of channel, the energy that went into that work, and then make the now, the me now version of that work. And then if we need to go back and forth to get it right, but I'm usually just focused on what's right for the project. Style is very secondary. I'll just make sure the idea is sound and that I feel really good about the project. And that's kind of like that's not something I would have said 15 years ago. I think I was like say yes to everything, make sure it looks cool. I feel like I've evolved past that mindset now. I really want to feel a project is worth my while, and I want to make sure that it has a real place in my practice and in my body of work, and it's something I'll be proud to show people. And then it's not sort of going backwards. Like, as long as I'm not going backwards, I don't mind even doing something that looks like what I did 15 years ago, but it should technically be a lot better version of that. You know what I mean? No. So
are you still cold emailing? Is there anybody on your desire list that you would like to work with?
Yeah. Oh man. So like cold emailing was, again, now we have DMs and social media and all these other ways to contact people. And I'm very aware. Here's my thing. Like, I'm keenly aware that we're all competing for, artists are, or at least in my circle, everyone's kind of competing for the same eyeballs and the same dollars. It's very noisy. I think you have to be aware of that. It's not just you out there clamoring for attention. There's around the world, there are millions of other people trying to get attention from clients or collectors or what have you. And so, I've built up a really good reputation over the last 18 years. And I think I've built a good name for myself. And, and try to maintain an image that is respectable and has integrity behind it, and people know what I stand for and the type of work I do. But I also try not to be salesy, and I don't want to come off like, so I think it's just how I package that up when I sort of pitch myself to someone in an email or a DM or whatever. I can sort of set myself apart with a really short and sweet note. Be like, look, my work will do the talking, and if you're interested, let's talk. I'd love to chat, kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, I use that all. I reach out to people all the time, and I think it's in your approach. There's like you don't want to you want to make. I mean, honestly, like you think about like what a really good doctor, you really should make you feel like you're their only patient of the day, or a really good whoever it is. You should feel in that moment like they've made you feel like it's just you. And I don't ever I'm not going to try and act like an art collector or a client is going to actually believe that they're the only person in the world I could possibly be talking to. But I do think that there's something about writing a very sort of, like bespoke, custom, like intentional, thoughtful, purposeful note in an email or a DM or whatever it may be, and making sure that you've done your research and you're speaking to them. And it's not like, all right, I typed this thing out, now copy paste to as many people as I can, and then just like t-shirt cannon that like note out to like as many people and see who catches it. Like, so I try and be thoughtful. I'll even not reach out to someone if I'm like, this doesn't make sense, So yeah, I got my relationship started with the Chicago Bulls that way. I've been working with the Bulls for like 5 years, and I reached out to them because at the time I thought the photography on their Instagram could have been a lot better than it was. That's just the reality. I thought, and they were interested in me saying that and invited me to come shoot a game, and that kind of set off a chain of events that led me working with them a lot over the years, and took a substantial, sort of amount of space in my portfolio. And it was all because I was just like, here's what I think I can do for you. Let's just talk sometime. Let's just have a chat. So I encourage all artists to do that. I think it's important. But it's tough because not all artists are confident enough to do that, or feel like they want to. It's like, I just made my work, can it sell? And it's like, I don't know, this day and age, like you got to figure out like what works for you as sort of putting yourself out there. It's just sort of you really don't have
so much
choice.
Is timing though too. Like on the day that they open that or look at that, maybe they're in the mood for it and maybe they're not. It's so subjective.
You're listening to Art on the Air, WVLP 103.1 FM, and on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM. And I'm looking at your Chicago Bulls site, The Last Dance, right now, and some of the work there, and very, very interesting, and kind of the Michael Jordan almost salute you have there and everything. One thing I wanted to find out is, do you ever exhibit your things in a gallery, or are you just too busy with the actual work?
No, yeah. So as I said, I think you're catching me in this sort of really exciting time because I'm making a very concerted effort to evolve my practice. I don't want to be. I don't want to be 50 and waiting in 15 years and like waiting for the next magazine project and like, all right, when's the next client thing? Like there's a sort of like grab the bull by the horns and like sort of really take control of the next phase of my career. So, I really am making a very concerted, intentional effort to start to sort of evolve my personal work and my sort of practice as just who I am as an artist outside of the bounds of clients. And that's been happening a lot this year, again, with the rise of NFTs and the rise of digital art becoming more acceptable as a sort of new medium that is being accepted and discussed and critiqued right alongside of traditional art in settings that are usually reserved for traditional artists, and Christie's and the Sotheby's and the Phillips, the auction houses of the world. There's galleries that are trying to figure out like, okay, like where does this fit into who we represent, who we show? And that's exciting because there's a whole generation of artists who came up on the computer, and not many of them have been sort of given the blessing of being, quote unquote, real artists. And I understand that, there's an old guard of fine art and traditional art that has to gatekeep. And I think a lot of people feel like, hey, what I do is valid. And so that's something that I'm seeing right now. And I just want to play my hand the right way for the long term. I don't want to just have like a splashy, fun 2021 while all this sort of new NFT stuff is happening. So yeah, to answer your question, I've been getting more sort of with gallery stuff. I have a gallery a group show I was just a part of in LA and sold a couple works there, and all digital works, by the way. And then a group show I'm a part of in Chicago in August that was just announced today. I just see more and more of that happening as we can consider a screen to be a viable place to show the work. I think the difference for me, maybe from someone who's younger is, or not even younger, but someone who just really does digital stuff, is I really still want to do physical. Like I want to do sculptural installation, physical type work. I just did a collaboration with Soho House Chicago. That was very much me collaborating with a fabricator who does, big cuts on a CNC machine of this big acrylic, and we put this really beautiful dichroic sort of holographic film on the acrylic, and then he cut out the shapes and the stuff that I made, and then we projected onto those shapes. And so I think things like that are really intriguing to me, and a really sort of natural evolution of the work that I've done over the years that was mostly for print. I'm a print artist. I'm really, my background really is in print. And now I'm seeing sort of like, and feeling like I want to create things that are a little more something that people could step into a little more physically, and kind of mix those two things. So, yeah.
How has COVID impacted you? You touched just briefly on that, both as your work, but also personally. And when you...
Yeah, man, COVID's, I'm trying to think how to... It's such a weird thing because... I want to say that there's been really positive things to come out of it, not out of COVID, but out of sort of impact it had. I mean, I do think that I, am in this position in my career right now that I'm really excited about as a result of COVID, certainly, or at least as a result of what happened because of COVID and forcing my time at the agency I was at to come to an end. I think a lot of people have been thrust into positions either that they wanted to be, and it sort of helped propel them to a next phase, or they've gone backwards, and I get that. That's happened to a lot of people in my life, family, friends, etc. For me, it was tough. I mean, it was, I have a toddler, and so having to manage being at home and my wife being at home and having a toddler at home for 16 months was a challenge, but we all fortunately really like each other and managed out like a schedule and figured out how to do that. And I tend to be a night owl, but I like getting up early too. It's kind of this curse, I can work late at night, I can work early. And so it's just, I started trying to find a rhythm and do my best with that, but certainly changed a lot. But yeah, now that I'm in my new studio here, my wife's back at work, my daughter's back in daycare. We're constantly on edge, of course, being really respectful of what we need to do in this situation to keep ourselves, safe and everything. It's been hard, but I think we've all gotten more comfortable on these Zoom calls, and I think it's actually forced me to sort of quote unquote meet more people that might not have taken the time to actually talk to face, at least over a screen. And I think that's been a positive effect. But I mean, it's a net negative for the world, no doubt about it. There's no two ways about it. But I guess you try and find the silver linings and.
It's devastating for the world, but there has to be a balance, and the balance is that people's lives have changed. And
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And remaining aware of that and cognizant of that, how much it's impacted my family, I can't even get into. Health wise, some of the things that have happened in the last year have been really devastating in my family, both immediate and extended. It's been really difficult, and I think I just see an obligation to continue working. The world isn't going to stop. For anyone. So it's sort of like I got to get up and keep moving for my family, and continue doing what I do. And I'm very lucky to be able to even do this at all, right? I mean, we're talking about this in the context of artists, but a lot of people didn't have a choice to be around a lot of people, or their job was basically eradicated altogether. And mine moves as much as I want it to move, essentially, is how I see it. So I feel like I'm in a very fortunate position in life. And if I waste that opportunity, then I'm really kind of doing a disservice to everybody in a way. I mean, you know what I mean? I just think I'm lucky to do this and can only complain so much. And I just try and remember that, I guess. Yeah.
So did you have an installation at Lollapalooza or what?
Yeah, it was at Soho House, Chicago. It's like a members kind of like club. They have events and all sorts of stuff like that. And yeah, so did that, like that installation I was talking about, and it was kind of in conjunction with Lollapalooza, and to kind of just celebrate, music and just this very colorful, kind of experience that was on screens and on these, large pieces. And yeah, it was a lot of fun to do that. So, yeah.
What are you looking forward to doing? Of course, we don't know with the Delta variant here, but getting out, assuming the past, whatever was the past COVID or real past COVID, what are you looking forward to doing?
I think evolving, in my work and continuing to see what it means to just have time. What do I do with the kind of time I have right now as an artist? I think I'm just looking forward to seeing like what comes out of me creatively, because I'm filled with ideas, but a lot of times it's like, okay, when are you going to sit down and start to execute? So I think the opportunities that are coming out of what I've put in, like I said before, your input is very correlated to your output, and so I think I'm just looking forward to seeing what kind of opportunities come from the type of work that I'm doing now. Collaborating with other artists and learning from other artists is a really big one for me too. And yeah, I don't know. I'm just excited because there's sort of like I'm at this spot where I just don't know. I really don't know what's around the corner, and that's exciting.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, real quick as we wrap up here, Chuck, tell us how people can see your work online, the various places there are.
I have basically been able to grab the name No Pattern just about everywhere. So nopattern.com and @nopattern on all the socials. That's it. You Google No Pattern. I'm very easy to find. So I appreciate your guys' time. It was a lot of fun to do this interview and chat with you.
Thank you.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on Art in the Air. Again, Chicago-based practice, artist, designer, photographer, and creative director, Chuck Anderson. And you can find him at nopattern.com or some variation of that. I'm sure if you do a Google search, you can see his work. I know I did earlier. So, Chuck, thank you so much for coming on Art in the Air and sharing your life story and your art.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You've been listening to Art in the Air, and we'd like to thank our guests this week on WVLP 103.1 FM and Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM, our weekly program covering arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. Art in the Air is heard every Friday at 11 a.m. and rebroadcast Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP. Art in the Air streams live at WVLP.org and is rebroadcast on Monday at 5 p.m. Plus is also heard on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM every Sunday at 7 p.m., also streaming live at lakeshorepublicradio.org and is available on Lakeshore Public Radio's website as a podcast. Our Spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Radio. Thanks again to Greg Kovach, WVLP Station Manager, and Tom Maloney, Vice President of Radio Operations for Lakeshore Public Radio. Our theme music is by Billy Foster with a vocal by Renee Foster. Art in the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant and the National Endowment for the Arts. Underwriters for Art in the Air, Walt Breidinger of Paragon Investments and Marilyn Van, Arts Patron. Information about Art in the Air is available at our website, brech.com/AOTA. That's Brech, BRECH.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our show is available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for information about upcoming shows and interviews. If you're interested in being a guest or sending us information about your arts-related event or exhibit, please email us at aota@brech.com. That's aota@brech, BRECH.com, or contact us through our Facebook page. Your hosts were Larry Breckner and Esther Golden, and we invite you back next week for another episode of Art on the Air.
Aloha, everyone. Have a splendid week.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your